Welcome, everyone. My guest today is the founder of Entrepreneurial Freedom, a firm built around the idea that service business leaders don't need to be essential to create growth, profit, and real strategic freedom. Jen is here with us today. She has built a practice that helps founders not just delegate tasks, but build a structure where decisions and operations actually run without them. So, Jen, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Could you please introduce yourself, your company, and tell us what you guys do?
Certainly. My name is Jen Eckhardt. As you mentioned, my business is Entrepreneurial Freedom, and we exist for the sole purpose of helping the founder of that professional services business go from being indispensable in the everyday operations to really being optional. So many of us start businesses and we do all the things because we can do all the things. And as a business grows,
Mhm.
that doesn't always allow us to scale in the way that it should. And so by really focusing in on what the different areas of genius are and helping the founder um, traverse the different identity levels necessary to become that optional owner and to either pursue different avenues, investments, mergers, acquisitions, new service lines, even, or even just enjoy a little free time, the free time they thought they were going to get when
Yeah.
they business. Um, th- that's what we're here to do.
That is great. And I think that you address an issue that touches every business because every business wants to scale and every business is going to encounter those same problems when scaling and wanting to have some more free time also, like you mentioned, and not just have a business. Yeah, it is your business, but you have to work 80 hours to make it run.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been doing this work at some level for about 18 years now, probably 20 some years if you look at the bricks and sticks experience that I had before I started the business. And
Mhm.
um one of the things that I know is when we build our businesses, we're so focused on revenue. We think revenue is the only thing that matters. And
Yeah.
what I know from experience, from my own three exits, from my clients' exits, from mergers and acquisitions, 80% of the value of a company is actually in their intangible capitals. And there's four different types of intangible capitals, but we focus on the two primary ones that I think are most easy to influence and also probably the most frustrating potentially for the CEO. And one of those is your people, right? Your human
Mhm.
capital. And the other one is your structural capital, your processes and systems. And those are really a great way for us to influence the value, the enterprise value of the asset, because your business is an asset, but it also influences your revenue. It increases your profit. It increases that freedom that we're talking about. And so, like you point out, it's not just for a service business or it's not just special to a certain size of business. It applies across the board and it makes a big difference in
Mhm.
your business operates and what it might sell for later on.
Yeah, and you just mentioned systems, and I know you also talk about framework systems like the KPI goal scored, ops freedom, and the owner's treadmill. And I just wanted to know if you can dive a little more into them and just tell us when also did those frameworks took shape and how do they help founders recalibrate where they spend their time.
For sure, for sure. So, School of Hard Knocks is a lot of how these uh, frameworks have been developed over time, testing them, rolling up my sleeves and working in my clients'
Mhm.
businesses and really understanding what the problem is and then how we can address it. And so we always start with a diagnostic. And I suggest no matter who you work with or even what sort of help you get, you all do that because you need to know what the starting point is. So that premium index gives us a starting point in terms of where your business is at, um, it across 60 different measures. So it's a very comprehensive diagnostic, but we use that as our baseline so that you can see that we're making a difference in your business as opposed to, um, you feeling like maybe we're doing it, the instinctual thing that we all kind of rely on and maybe can't
Yeah.
always pick up with data. So we start with that premium index. And then when we talk about the owner's treadmill is exactly what it sounds like. It's the things that we say to ourselves that keep us locked in operations, that keeps us stuck in the doing. It'll be faster if I just do it myself. I can't find anybody that wants to do this kind of work. I can't find anybody that's
Mhm.
good at this kind of work. It's those things, those self perpetuating things that keep us on that owner's treadmill and keep us locked in the doing of things. We want owners, founders, CEOs to transition to looking at the what and why of what's being done and not involved in the how. They need to be able to define success and what the desired outcome is and hire brilliant and amazing people to take care of the how. And we
Yeah.
do that. We help you do that through the ops flywheel. And this is the last one I think you mentioned. In the ops flywheel, a flywheel, just in general, no matter what it's applied to, the idea is that you get it started and the faster it gets going, the more it picks up speed, it creates its own momentum. And it's the same here. So the different parts, and this will resonate because we just talked about intangible capitals, but the different parts of the ops flywheel are applicable across the life cycle of a business.
Okay.
They are process, profit, people, and process, right? Did I say
Mhm.
process, price, purpose, profit, process, and people? So those are the things that we work on with our clients. And each year we do something, we're looking at the same things, but we're looking at it from a higher vantage point. So everything we do is very evolutionary to
Yeah.
with and for our clients.
Yeah, and it's all very smart. Yeah. And I think when you talk about for example, just the owner's treadmill, and you mentioned some of the examples, and we hear that a lot of the time.
Oh,
It's always issues that comes back, but when you address them correctly, I think you just realize it's not very deep issues, and it can be with the right people and the right frameworks and systems, it can be resolved pretty easily.
yeah, it can. One of the things that I hear a lot from clients, and I'd be curious to know if you hear them too, is I can't find the right people, or I can't. Some of them will come to us and say, I've delegated everything, and somehow it still keeps coming back to me. And this is not a popular position, but I don't think delegation is the goal. I think it's authority transfer. If you delegate, you remain the hub of that wheel well, or that wheel, and everybody else is a spokes.
Mm,
Everything
yeah.
still have to go through you because you have to approve it or do the quality assurance or things like that. Where if you truly transfer authority, they know the things that they can decide without you. They know what the guidelines are. They know what the goals are for the business, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
But it's also very hard. I talked about identity a little while ago, and these
Mhm.
businesses are our babies. We birthed them, we've raised them, we've got them to where they want to be, and it's
Yeah.
really hard to let go of that
Yeah.
identity, both our own and how it intersects with the business.
Yeah, and I think people will see it as it is a subtle line between authority and delegation, and
Mm,
I think people need to understand what is the real difference, as you mentioned, and how that applies, in real terms, and just let go, because I think that sometimes what I tell people is the fear, of not having that whole control, that everything goes through you, but at the same time, while doing that, you you're not permitting your business to scale and progress as it could be going.
yeah.
Yeah, and
A
yeah, go
few of
ahead.
my Yeah, I just was gonna say this analogy always makes me laugh. A few of my clients came up with this, and they talk about it as the difference between being Superman to your team and being Yoda, right? So Superman comes in to save the day, they answer all the questions that get asked. Yoda is a completely different presence and type of leadership, right? So
Yeah.
Yoda's asking questions back, reflecting, and making them figure out things on their own. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is we're so used to being Superman or Superwoman, and we're used to answering the questions. And so, one of the tips that I give clients is just to go brain dead and just know that when anybody comes to you to ask a question, the only thing you should say is, "I don't know. What do you think?" And let them
Mm,
begin to resolve the problems or talk through and process the problems with you. But by having that one rote thing that you know you're going to say every time somebody comes in, then that prevents you from launching into that. Okay, here's step one and step two and step three, which absolves your team of having to problem solve on their own. And then it becomes a
yeah.
dependency. I call it the baby bird syndrome. They just keep coming to us to feed them.
Yeah, and you create also autonomous and a strong team, that have that authority and have that confidence also that you are letting them take decisions that you are not, like you said, you're not like feeding them to take those decisions. But we know, we talked about systems and frameworks, and those are technical, but the foundational shifts often come down to the people and the decision makers. And I know that when we start to work, we start with the decision makers. But how do you help teams internalize that change and make it happen uh, to the to the down of the pyramid, if I might say?
Yeah. There's a couple things that we do that I think make us different. And first of all, we work with both the CEO and the COO or whoever the
Mhm.
op person is, because they're different skill sets and in very real ways they complement each other. But a lot of times that COO is put in a place where they're translating the vision and strategic measures that the CEO has created to the rest of the team. Really, what we're talking about here is change management, right? And it doesn't matter what we're trying to do, being able to harness the change management and help guide people through that is really important. So, one of the things that we do at the beginning of our engagements is meet with as many of the team members as we can to just get a feel for what they think about the general performance of the business. And I'm literally asking very simple questions. What works? What doesn't work? What would you see differently? It's less about the questions and the topics, more about creating the relationship. But a lot of times, some of the best ideas come from the team members that are on the ground floor. They're at the grassroots part of the
I hear that
organization,
a lot.
and they see what can be different and how it can change. And
Mhm.
it's really fun for me as a consultant or advisor to have one of those initiatives be one of the first things we push through, one of the first changes we make. And so, what that does is encourage everybody to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. They see what they say matters and makes a difference. And sometimes we can get lost in um, the intellectual part of it when there's very practical things that we can do and we're just not asking.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. And I
Yeah.
know that there's a problem also because many founders and CEOs and decision makers say that they want to step back, but
Yeah.
when the time comes, it's hard for them. So I wanted to ask you, in your experience, what are the most underrated signals that you watch or that to tell you that a business is ready to go from founder dependent to self-managing? Because you mentioned that we know that there is a little play a part where you're the founder and you have to take those responsibilities also to
Mhm.
know what you're doing in every aspect of it. But then when is it really the time that you should give that authority?
I'm going to quote Stephen Covey here and say, begin with the end in mind. So, in fact, I am guest presenting this week at a workshop and talking about looking at your org chart as a growth roadmap. Right. So even if you are just a single solopreneur right now, I think you should be thinking about how your business is going to grow and expand because
Hmm.
that will, it's like the proverbial buying the yellow car, right? When you buy the yellow car, then you see all the other yellow cars when you thought you were the only one that had one. And so building the future state org chart, that growth roadmap helps you
Yeah.
see opportunities that you might not have already seen or seen without that lens. But I don't think it's ever too early to start thinking about that and planning for that, because chances are good that you won't be doing that for the life cycle of your business, that it will be passed on to someone else.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And do you have an example in mind where, you help a client where he was stuck in that position and, through your frameworks, your experience, your systems, and working really in their businesses, you help them achieve, greater things in terms of, metrics and maybe revenue or growth. Do you have some success stories that you could share with us?
Yeah. My favorite one is a gal from Arizona. They run a consulting firm, but it was heavily dependent on her for everything to get done. So that hub and spoke thing that we talked about, she had a staff of about 65 people, but everything was still running through her. A really successful business. I think we have this belief that's erroneous, that if you're struggling, the business is failing, and I have not found that to be the case. My best clients are clients that are growing faster than operations can keep up with. And
Mm-hmm.
so she had a really healthy revenue. It was around 6.5 million. What we did is remove her from daily operations. We used some low code software to help them create some project management systems that everybody could follow, because they were using spreadsheets and those weren't always updated the way they needed to be.
Yeah,
Um, and then a lot of mindset and identity work, a lot of work with the team, to cultivate ideas from them, help them understand what the goal was, and what targets they were shooting at. That made a huge difference. In the end, at the end of the first year, she was pretty much out of running the business. We had increased revenue from that six and a half ish to eight and a half ish, closer to nine. But instead of retiring, and these people are so fun to work with, instead of retiring or stepping back, she spun up a whole new division of her business that is a software as a service product.
oh,
And so the time that we were able to ransom back from running the first business gave her the time to start a whole new, what's turned out to be very successful division, of the
and
same
a-
business.
and you mentioned that they were running on spreadsheets, and then she went on to develop a SaaS. So that's it's a nice story.
That
It's a nice
right?
story.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But the spreadsheet thing is really common, right? You run
yeah,
across
absolutely.
people and nobody you I think there's even a book that's called Death by Meetings. Nobody enjoys endless meetings. And so a lot of the way we ransom time back is making scorecards and progress public, whether it's through a project management system or just the scorecards themselves that are always public and everybody can see what the results are. Um,
Mhm.
we're developing a culture of ownership, right? You can't have an authority transfer if someone isn't going to own the results, right? We
Yeah,
can't have a group of people that are just here to come in and punch their time card. And so it really is very much a cultural change in terms of who's ultimately responsible for what and
yeah,
how that rolls up to the results for the client. Because if the clients win, everybody wins, right?
exactly. Yeah, and uh, question that is related to what we just talked about,
Mhm.
but given your focus on the authority transfer and
Yeah.
reducing the founder dependency, how are you thinking about the hottest topic right now, which is AI? As a leverage layer inside the businesses, and not as a replacement for people, but how do you see it? What do you see is going on with AI in your perspective?
So I lived through the automation, the emergence of automation. I remember then that we were all worried that we were going to lose our jobs, right? That we would no
Hmm.
longer be relevant. So I see some similarities there. I've spent a lot of time thinking about where I want to be with this AI. And there's such a push to think of AI as an employee and as an agent and kind of personify it or humanize it. And to me, it's a tool. It's like an automation tool and work more efficient. As a consumer of AI, one of the things that I notice or think about is AI can answer everything, right? There's very
Yeah.
little you can ask AI that it can't address. But first of all, how do we know that it's quality advice that it's giving us without having the experience or the wisdom to be able to discern that? And that's not just in my area of expertise. That could be any of gardening, right? How do we know that the advice AI just gave us about gardening applies to me and it's good quality advice instead of something that came from something that was more general or less quality? And that will
Yeah.
always be at work. Um, the other thing that I see is we're coming out of, I think people are um, losing patience with um, buying courses or things like that. I have chosen to not offer any sort of DIY course because I was so invested in the outcomes. Remember that diagnostic that we talked about? We
Yeah.
do that every year so we can measure progress. Courses and those sorts of things are notorious for having a huge drop off rate. And so knowledge with my clients even isn't the problem. That's not what keeps them stuck. A
Mhm.
lot of times, the CEO founders that I work with are very bright and have done a lot of work to try to solve the problem of founder dependency. It's taking the right action that makes the
Mhm.
difference. And so a lot of times just the accountability of having somebody like me that they can ask questions, yeah, I get this about authority transfer, but I have questions about the actual application to my personal um, situation. So
Mm.
that in general is how I approach AI. On the other hand, if there is one place that I think AI lends itself very well to, is creating the operating systems within our businesses. And so historically, in the beginning, we had these huge binders that were full of SOPs that you had to flip through and try to find what you were looking for. Fast forward, then it became a Google Drive or a SharePoint Drive or something like that, where you put all
Yeah.
those SOPs in. What we're working with now and actively looking for clients to help us test this is to build that AI SOP or operating system within the business as an AI agent or an AI oracle is what I'm calling it. So there's organizational there it's always going to be garbage in, garbage out with technology. So really what we're doing is helping you prioritize. We're helping you create the structure of the data that we need to gather so that we're giving the AI good data to work from, right?
Yeah.
And that ensures that we get good data on the other side as well.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of businesses focusing on building their own internal AI agents based on and instructed and trained on their data because as you mentioned, these open LLMs are trained on so much data that sometimes they hallucinate. We don't know if what they say to us really apply to us, and we have to always look at it, back at it, and make sure it corresponds to what we want. We see a lot of businesses, used to keep that data, and now they train them. You have something more reliable for your own business, and that is way more accurate than traditional LLMs. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I don't see AI taking jobs. In fact, I think AI is going to create some jobs. We talked about the human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And so that's how we address it. So there's got to be some human intelligence embedded within the business, or at least on a consulting level that can tell you this is good data, this is good infrastructure, and think of those roles internally because you have that intimate knowledge of your business and the knowledge that's required to be able to perform the tasks or even the roles. So I
Yeah,
think it's going to create some roles. The competitive advantage I think it gives our clients is the ability to focus more on client relationships because some of this is being done in the background. So I talked to a client today who created an analytics report with the help of AI to process the data from that
yeah,
report. And that used to take him 2 weeks. Now it takes more like 2 hours. So we have the data there, but then it's those higher order thinking skills that, yes, AI can help with, but without the wisdom and experience to know what it means, it's hard to interpret for a client. So Dave can spend his time looking at what the data means and what they should do next in terms of their marketing efforts, as opposed to just analyzing and getting it into columns that make sense, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's massive time saving, and you use the power of the people to really just spend it on what brings the most value to the business. That's what it is.
Absolutely, and we're always gonna be people doing business with people, like, that relationship
Mhm,
part is just so important to me, and I have sacrificed scale in my own business
mhm.
for the sake of relationships, and so AI is gonna help us move more quickly with that, but it will never replace the people.
Yeah, at least for not for the moment, unless Terminator, like the
Yeah,
movie Terminator comes, but for a moment, we're far away from there.
yeah,
And, maybe a last question, a little bit different from what we've talked, looking
sure.
beyond business operations, and you mentioned something about exiting. So I wanted to know, how do you help founders think about, the equity and exit readiness as a part of this freedom transition? And can you expand a little bit more on your own experience with that?
Yeah. I'm going to go backwards just a little bit because
Hmm.
uh, a lot of my business is knowledge and skills, and it's taken me a long time to kind of look around and figure out knowledge and skills is not the only thing here. If it were that simple, I wouldn't have a job anymore. There's enough people out there that can help you with skills and knowledge. Um, that there we just work ourselves out of jobs. What I think makes the biggest difference is the people thing that we're talking about. And so the question that we need to ask ourselves is, we're setting all these business goals, but who do I need to become as a leader in order to have that business? What changes do I have to make personally? The Superman to Yoda is one facet of that.
Hmm.
um, moving from I did this myself and having the pride in that work to I did this through the coordination of other people. It's a different mindset. It's a different identity. And likewise, when we talk about exit, I don't remember the numbers, but I know when I heard it, I was horrified. But there's this large percentage of people who exit their business by selling it or bringing in a successor, whatever that looks like. However, there's 7 different ways to exit your business
Okay.
that regret it because they haven't planned for what they're going to do next.
Yeah.
And there's so much experience and wisdom. I know I keep talking about that, but there's so much there that becomes their legacy. And if we don't help them create a way to share that with the rest of the world, to create that legacy for themselves, then we're missing a lot of hard-earned knowledge, a lot of hard-earned wisdom and experience that could be shared with a younger generation who may not do it exactly the way that we do it, but could
Hmm.
benefit from the tutelage and experience that we've earned ourselves. So that's part of where I think I will go. I have an educational background in psychology, so
Okay.
I'm always fascinated by that, by the neuroscience and everything that goes into that. But I do think that's the wild card. We can teach the skills, we can teach the knowledge, but it's who we're becoming in the process. And I always think entrepreneurship is the best vehicle for personal development that I've found in this lifetime. And so it's natural that they're a fit together.
I like that. It is very wise, and you mentioned wisdom, and it looks, and we can see that you have a lot of wisdom and knowledge to bring on the table, plus the relationship part, that's for sure. So I would just like to, for our audience to finish on this note, where can they find you on what platforms? Um,
Absolutely. So you can always find me at my website. That's entrepreneurialfreedom.com. And you can learn more about the team and about our frameworks and services there. A lot of free information that'll help you accomplish what you want to accomplish in terms of growing, scaling, exiting. Other than that, LinkedIn is the primary profile, and you'll find me. Just do a search for Jen Eckhardt, and you'll find me there. That's where I share a lot of thought leadership and have a lot of conversations and contribute to as many people as I can. This is a mission for me. We're kind of beyond it just being a business. This is entrepreneurship changes the world. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Mhm.
Because it's entrepreneurs that support the little league team and contribute to the local food banks, and it's those small businesses that are doing that. And if it isn't a sustainable lifestyle for the entrepreneur, they don't succeed, right?
Yeah,
Um, so it's just that important, I think, to the fabric of civilization that we keep this moving and help them be successful.
there's a great goal. Thank you very much. I'll make sure to put the links in the description. Thank you for this conversation, for sharing the insights, your work, and thank you guys for listening to today's episode. And see you all on the next one.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.